The plane was falling from the sky. Both pilots had given up. 275 people were saying their final goodbyes. Then a small girl ran to the cockpit, pounding on the door and shouting that she knew how to save everyone. What happened next shocked the entire world. Before we begin, comment below which country you're watching from. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Captain Michael Anderson had been flying planes for 28 years. He had flown through storms, handled engine failures, and landed planes in the worst weather conditions. But nothing had prepared him for what was about to happen on Flight 447. It was a normal Tuesday morning. The Boeing 777 took off from New York at 9 a.m. The destination was London. There were 275 people on board, 259 passengers and 16 crew members. Everyone was relaxed. Some people were reading books. Others were watching movies. Children were playing games. Nobody knew that in 2 hours, they would all be facing death. Captain Anderson sat in the cockpit with his co-pilot, Sarah Chen. Sarah was young but very experienced. She had been flying for 12 years. They were talking about normal things, the weather, the flight path, when they would land. "Everything looks good," Sarah said, checking the instruments. "Clear skies ahead. Should be a smooth flight." Captain Anderson nodded. "Let's hope it stays that way." But hope wasn't enough. At 11:17 a.m., the first warning light came on. Beep. 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 "Hydraulic system A is failing," Sarah said, her voice calm but concerned. Captain Anderson immediately began the emergency checklist. Every pilot knows what to do when one hydraulic system fails. It's serious, but not dangerous. Planes have backup systems for exactly this reason. "Switching to hydraulic system B," he said. But then, something that almost never happens, happened. Beep. 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 "Hydraulic system B is also failing." Sarah's voice was no longer calm. "Captain, we're losing all hydraulic pressure." Captain Anderson felt his heart beat faster. Losing both hydraulic systems was extremely rare. But it had happened before. Pilots had training for this. There were still things they could do. "Initiating emergency procedures," he said. His hands moved quickly over the controls, following every step he had practiced hundreds of times in simulators. But then the worst happened. "Electrical system is failing," Sarah shouted. "We're losing power to the control surfaces." Captain Anderson pulled back on the control stick. Nothing happened. He pushed it forward. Nothing. The plane wasn't responding to any of his commands. "We've lost control," he said quietly. Then louder, "Sarah, we've lost complete control of the aircraft." The plane started to tilt downward. Slowly at first, then faster. They were beginning to fall from the sky. Captain Anderson looked at the altitude meter. They were at 10,000 feet. But they were dropping fast. 9,500 feet. 9,000 feet. The ground was coming closer every second. He tried everything he had ever learned. Every emergency procedure. Every trick and technique from 28 years of flying. Nothing worked. The plane kept falling. 8,000 feet. 7,500 feet. Sarah was crying now, still trying the controls, still hoping something would work. But both pilots knew the truth. They had maybe 3 minutes before the plane hit the ground. 3 minutes left to live. Captain Anderson reached for the speaker button. This was the hardest thing he would ever have to do. He had to tell 275 people that they were about to die. His hand was shaking, but his voice was steady. "This is your captain speaking." He paused. "How do you tell people they're going to die?" We have experienced complete system failure. I've tried everything I know. I'm so sorry, but we are going to crash. Please brace for impact. Tell the people you love that you love them. I'm so sorry. I'm so very sorry. He turned off the speaker and put his head in his hands. Behind them, in the cabin, chaos erupted. People started screaming. Some were crying. Others sat frozen in shock. In seat 24C, a mother held her two children close. "It's okay, babies," she whispered, tears running down her face. "Mommy loves you so much." In seat 15A, a man called his wife. "I love you," he said. "I've always loved you. Take care of yourself. Tell the kids I'm proud of them." In seat 8B, a woman was praying, her eyes closed tight, her lips moving fast. Everyone was saying goodbye. Goodbye to their families. Goodbye to their dreams. Goodbye to life. The flight attendants tried to stay calm, but they were terrified too. They helped people get into the brace position, even though they all knew it probably wouldn't help. When a plane crashes from this height, at this speed, nobody survives. 6,000 feet now. Less than 2 minutes left. But in seat 12F, near the window, one person wasn't crying or praying or saying goodbye. Her name was Emma Chen. She was 11 years old. While everyone else panicked, Emma sat very still. She was listening. Not to the screams or the crying. She was listening to the plane itself. She heard the angle of the descent. She heard the sound of the engines. She felt the way the plane was shaking. And she knew exactly what was wrong. Around her, the chaos was getting worse. People were making final phone calls to their families. A businessman was deleting files from his laptop, not wanting anyone to find his secrets after he died. A young couple who had just gotten engaged were crying together, knowing they would never have their wedding. An elderly woman was writing a goodbye letter to her grandchildren on a napkin with shaking hands. The flight attendants were doing their best to keep everyone calm, but even they had tears in their eyes. One of them, a young man named David, kept looking at a photo on his phone, his daughter's first birthday party that he would now never see. But Emma blocked it all out. She closed her eyes and focused on what her mother had taught her. She could almost hear her mother's voice in her head: "When everyone else panics, you stay calm. When everyone else gives up, you remember what you know. Knowledge is power, Emma. Always remember that." Emma wasn't a normal 11-year-old. Her mother had been Captain Lisa Chen, one of the best pilots in the world. But Captain Chen hadn't just been a pilot. She had also been a researcher. She spent years studying plane crashes, specifically, crashes that everyone said were impossible to survive. Most people in aviation thought her mother's research was useless. "Why study impossible situations?" they said. "If a plane is going to crash, it's going to crash. Nothing can be done." But Captain Chen didn't believe that. She believed that with the right knowledge, even impossible crashes could be survived. She spent 15 years researching, studying, and testing. She found techniques that no one else knew about. Special ways to control a plane when normal controls don't work. And she taught everything to her daughter. Every day after school, Emma learned about aerodynamics, how planes fly through the air. Every weekend, they practiced in flight simulators. Every vacation was spent visiting research centers and talking to engineers. Other kids played soccer or learned piano. Emma learned how to save planes that were falling from the sky. When her mother died in a car accident 2 years ago, Emma tried to forget all that training. She tried to be a normal kid. She tried to forget about plane crashes and emergency procedures. But now, as the plane fell toward the ground, all that training came rushing back. She knew what was wrong. She knew how to fix it. And she knew she had less than 2 minutes to convince the pilots to listen to her. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. "Sit down, someone yelled at her. "What are you doing?" Emma didn't answer. She ran down the aisle toward the cockpit. People stared at her as she passed. A little girl, running forward while everyone else prepared to die. It didn't make sense. "Someone stop her," another person shouted. But the flight attendants were strapped into their seats. And even if they could move, what did it matter? They were all going to die anyway in about 90 seconds. Emma reached the cockpit door. It was locked. After September 11, 2001, cockpit doors were made super strong so that no one could break in. She pounded on the door with both fists. "Let me in," she screamed. "I know how to save us. My mom taught me. Please. Let me in or we're all going to die." 5,000 feet. 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Inside the cockpit, Captain Anderson heard the pounding. He heard a child's voice screaming about saving the plane. "It's a kid," Sarah said, confused. "What is a kid doing?" Captain Anderson was exhausted. He had already accepted death. He had already said goodbye over the speaker. The plane was falling and there was nothing anyone could do about it. But then he thought, what if? It was crazy. It was impossible. An 11-year-old girl saying she could save the plane. It made no sense. But he had just told 275 people they were going to die. He had tried everything he knew, and it hadn't worked. In 90 seconds, they would hit the ground and everyone would die. So what did he have to lose? If the girl was wrong, they would die. But they were going to die anyway. If the girl was somehow right, they might live. Captain Anderson pressed the button to unlock the door. The door burst open and a small girl ran in, breathing hard. She had dark hair in a ponytail and was wearing a hoodie with an airplane on it. "Who are you?" Captain Anderson asked. "My name is Emma Chen," the girl said quickly. "My mother was Captain Lisa Chen. She was a pilot and a researcher. She studied crashes like this. She spent 15 years learning how to save planes when normal controls don't work. She taught me everything." 4,500 feet. 1 minute and 15 seconds. Sarah stared at her. "You're just a kid. How can you possibly?" "My mother's research works." Emma interrupted. "I know it sounds crazy, but you have to trust me. You said yourself that everything you tried didn't work. That's because you're using normal procedures. This isn't a normal situation. You need to do something different." Captain Anderson looked at the altitude meter. 4,000 feet. They were falling so fast. He made his decision. "Tell me what to do," he said. "Every detail. Right now." Emma moved between the two pilot seats. She looked at all the instruments quickly, her eyes moving fast, reading everything. "Okay," she said. "You're trying to pull the nose up, right? Trying to stop the descent?" "Yes," Captain Anderson said. "But nothing's working." "That's because you don't have enough control power," Emma explained. "When you lose hydraulic and electrical systems, the controls get weak. You're pulling back, but the plane barely responds. You don't have enough force to overcome the descent." 3,500 feet. 1 minute left. "So what do we do?" Sarah asked desperately. Emma took a deep breath. "You have to do something that sounds completely wrong. You have to dive steeper first." "What?" both pilots shouted at the same time. "That will kill us faster." Captain Anderson said. "No, listen." Emma said urgently. "When you dive steeper, the plane speeds up. When it speeds up, more air flows over the wings and control surfaces. More airflow means more control power. You dive for just a few seconds to build up that power, then you use all that power to pull up. My mother called it dynamic energy recovery. You fall a little more to gain the power to stop falling. 3,000 feet. 45 seconds. Captain Anderson's mind was racing. Everything in his training said this was wrong. Diving steeper when you're already diving? That's suicide. That's exactly what you never do. But his training had already failed. Normal procedures had already failed. And this girl was speaking with technical precision that didn't sound like an 11-year-old making things up. If we do this and you're wrong. He started. We die, Emma finished. But if you don't do it, we die anyway. You have 45 seconds to decide. Captain Anderson looked at Sarah. Sarah looked back at him. They both knew they had no other choice. Tell me exactly what to do, Captain Anderson said. Step by step. Emma spoke fast but clearly. Push forward on the control stick. Not a little, push it forward hard. Make the plane dive 15 degrees steeper. Count to 3. Exactly 3 seconds. Every instinct in Captain Anderson's body screamed no. But he pushed forward. The plane's nose dropped even more. They started falling faster. Much faster. 2,500 feet. 2,000 feet. 1,800 feet. The ground was so close now. Through the windscreen, Captain Anderson could see individual trees. He could see houses and cars. He could see a park where children were playing. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, Sarah was saying, her voice breaking. 1, Emma counted. 2. 3. Now. Pull back with everything you have. Both of you. Pull as hard as you can. Captain Anderson and Sarah both yanked back on their control sticks with all their strength. They pulled so hard their arms shook. They pulled like they were trying to rip the sticks out of the floor. 1,500 feet. 1,200 feet. Full throttle. Emma shouted. Maximum engine power. Now. Captain Anderson pushed the throttle forward. The engines roared, screaming at full power. And then something amazing happened. The plane started to respond. The nose began to rise. Slowly. So slowly. But it was rising. It's working. Sarah screamed. Oh my God, it's working. Don't stop pulling. Emma commanded. Keep pulling. Keep full power. Don't change anything. 1,000 feet. 800 feet. 600 feet. The ground was so close that Captain Anderson could see people looking up at them. He could read street signs. He could see the fear on people's faces below as they watched a huge airplane falling toward them. Hold it. Hold it. Emma kept saying. Trust the physics. Keep pulling. 500 feet. 400 feet. The plane was still descending, but slower now. The angle was improving. They were transitioning from a death dive to a steep descent. 300 feet. 200 feet. Captain Anderson could see individual leaves on trees. He could see the expression on a man's face in his backyard. He could see a dog running. We're not going to make it, Sarah sobbed. Yes we are. Emma said firmly. Keep holding. Don't give up. 100 feet. 50 feet. They were so low that people on the ground were ducking and running away. And then, at just 30 feet above the ground, so close that if anyone jumped out they would survive the fall, the plane finally stopped descending and began to climb. Not fast. Not soaring into the sky. But climbing. They were alive. The plane climbed slowly but steadily. 100 feet. 200 feet. 500 feet. 1,000 feet. Captain Anderson's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the controls. Tears were streaming down his face. We're alive, he whispered. We're actually alive. Sarah was crying too, but she was also laughing. That strange laughter that comes when you survive something impossible. Emma stepped back from between the seats. Now that the emergency was over, she suddenly felt very tired. And very young. She had just saved 275 people, but she was still just an 11-year-old girl who wanted her mom. How did you know that would work? Captain Anderson asked, his voice full of wonder. My mother spent 15 years proving it would work, Emma said quietly. She wrote papers about it. She tested it in simulators. She tried to teach other pilots, but nobody would listen. They all said her research was useless. They said that if a plane was already crashing, nothing could be done. She was right, Sarah said. She was right about everything. And you saved us. Captain Anderson reached for the speaker button again. The passengers needed to know what happened. They were probably still braced for impact, still waiting to die. This is your captain, he said. His voice was shaking but full of emotion. We're not going to crash. We've recovered. We're climbing. We're safe. He paused, trying to find the right words. A few minutes ago, I told you we were going to die. I believed it. I had tried everything I knew, and nothing worked. But then someone on this plane knew something I didn't know. An 11-year-old girl named Emma Chen knew how to save us when I didn't. Her mother spent years researching exactly this situation. And Emma remembered everything her mother taught her. We're going to land at the nearest airport. Everyone is safe. I don't know how to explain what just happened except to say that sometimes knowledge exists in unexpected places. And sometimes the bravest person on a plane is the smallest one. Thank you, Emma. You saved all of us. In the cabin, people didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream or pray. Most did all of those things. The mother in seat 24C was holding her children and sobbing with relief. Just minutes ago, she had been saying goodbye to them. Now they were alive. Her hands were still shaking. She couldn't believe it. She kept touching her children's faces, making sure they were real, making sure this wasn't a dream. Her daughter, only 7 years old, looked up at her with confused eyes. Mommy, are we okay now? Yes, baby, the mother whispered. We're okay. We're going to be okay. The man in seat 15A called his wife back. I'm okay, he said, his voice breaking. We're okay. I'm coming home. On the other end of the line, his wife was crying so hard she could barely speak. He had called her 10 minutes ago to say goodbye. She had been preparing to tell their children that their father was gone. Now he was alive. It felt like a miracle. The woman in seat 8B was still praying, but now she was saying thank you instead of goodbye. She prayed in Spanish, her voice shaking, thanking God and all the saints she could remember. She had made peace with death. She had accepted it. But now she had been given a second chance at life. The businessman who had been deleting files was staring at his laptop screen in shock. He had been so sure he was going to die that he had deleted everything, his work, his photos, his memories. Now he would have to start over. But he was alive to start over. That's all that mattered. The young engaged couple were holding each other tight. We're going to have that wedding, the man whispered to his fiancée. We're going to have our whole life together. The elderly woman looked at the goodbye letter she had written to her grandchildren. She folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. She would keep it as a reminder that every moment with her family was precious. She had been given more time, and she wasn't going to waste a single second of it. People were hugging strangers. Flight attendants were crying and laughing at the same time. Everyone was experiencing the same thing, the impossible joy of being alive when you had already accepted death. A flight attendant came to Emma's seat and saw her backpack there. She opened it and found textbooks about aerodynamics, notebooks filled with equations about plane physics, and a photo of Emma with her mother. Both of them were wearing pilot uniforms and smiling. The flight attendant understood then. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a miracle. This was knowledge and training and a mother's love that saved them all. Captain Anderson directed the plane toward Kennedy Airport in New York. They had turned back after the emergency. The plane was still having problems, but it was flyable now. Air traffic control had been listening to everything. They cleared all other planes away and gave Flight 447 direct clearance to land. Flight 447, we heard what happened, the controller said. Emergency vehicles are standing by. You're cleared for runway 4. The whole airport is routing for you. As they approached the runway, Captain Anderson realized his hands had stopped shaking. Emma's technique had worked so well that the plane was actually easier to control now than it had been during the crisis. The landing was smooth. Perfect, even. The wheels touched down gently, and the plane rolled to a stop. Everyone in the cabin burst into applause. They were clapping and cheering and crying all at once. After they landed, investigators came to study what happened. They interviewed Captain Anderson and Sarah. They examined the plane's black box recordings. They checked every system that had failed. What they found was shocking. The hydraulic systems had failed because of a manufacturing defect. Something that wasn't the pilot's fault or the airline's fault. Just a rare, terrible combination of mechanical failures that should never happen but did. Under normal circumstances, that combination would have been completely unrecoverable. Every simulation showed that the plane should have crashed. Every expert agreed that there was nothing Captain Anderson could have done. Except for one thing they didn't account for, Captain Lisa Chen's research. The investigators found her papers. They read her studies on impossible crash scenarios. They ran simulations using her techniques. Everything worked exactly as Emma had described. This research should be mandatory training for all pilots, one investigator said. Captain Chen discovered techniques that could save thousands of lives. Why didn't anyone listen to her? The answer was simple, because it was different. Because it went against conventional training. Because people don't like to believe that a better way exists when they've been doing things one way for so long. News of what happened spread around the world. 11-year-old girl saves 275 lives, child pilot lands doomed plane, girl's knowledge prevents massive tragedy. Everyone wanted to interview Emma. News channels. Newspapers. Magazines. Even the president called to thank her. But Emma was uncomfortable with all the attention. I didn't do anything special, she told reporters. I just remembered what my mom taught me. She's the one who figured it all out. She spent 15 years trying to teach people, but nobody would listen. If anyone should be famous, it's her. Why do you think nobody listened to your mother? A reporter asked. Emma thought for a moment. Because people are scared of new ideas. My mom's research said that things everybody believed were wrong. She said planes could be saved in situations where everyone else said it was impossible. That's hard for people to accept. It's easier to believe that some things just can't be done. And now, the reporter asked. Now maybe people will listen, Emma said. Now maybe other pilots will learn these techniques. And maybe the next time something like this happens, the pilots won't need an 11-year-old in the cockpit to tell them what to do. They'll already know. Emma was right. Things did change. Airlines around the world started studying Captain Chen's research. Flight schools added her techniques to their training programs. Pilots learned about dynamic energy recovery and other methods for handling impossible situations. Captain Anderson became one of the biggest advocates. He traveled to flight schools and aviation conferences, telling Emma's story and teaching Captain Chen's techniques. I've been flying for 28 years, he would say. I thought I knew everything. But an 11-year-old girl taught me that there's always more to learn. Pride almost killed me and 274 other people. Humility saved us. The aviation industry created the Captain Lisa Chen Memorial Award for Innovation in Flight Safety. The first recipient was supposed to be Emma, but she refused. "Give it to young researchers," she said. "Give it to people who have new ideas that everyone thinks are crazy. My mom would want that." Emma went back to school, back to being a normal sixth grader. Or as normal as possible after saving 275 lives and becoming internationally famous. Her classmates treated her like a celebrity at first, asking for autographs and selfies. But Emma didn't want that. She just wanted to be a regular kid. The first day back at school was strange. Everyone stared at her. Some kids wanted to be her friend just because she was famous. Others were jealous of all the attention she was getting. A few even said mean things, claiming she was lying or that the whole thing was made up for publicity. Emma's best friend, Sarah, different from the co-pilot, stayed by her side through it all. "Don't listen to them," Sarah said. "You're still the same Emma. You're still my best friend who likes pizza and hates math homework and laughs at stupid jokes. You just happen to also be a hero." But being a hero wasn't easy. Emma had nightmares sometimes. She would dream about the plane falling, about not making it to the cockpit in time, about the pilots not listening to her. She would wake up sweating, her heart racing. Her aunt, who she lived with, took her to a therapist. "What you experienced was traumatic," the therapist explained. "You came very close to death. It's normal to have these feelings. It's normal to be scared." "But I saved everyone," Emma said. "Why do I still feel bad?" "Because you're human," the therapist said gently. "Heroes aren't people who don't feel fear. Heroes are people who feel fear and keep going anyway. You felt that fear, Emma. You just didn't let it stop you." Slowly, life returned to normal. She did her homework. She hung out with friends. She played video games and watched movies and did all the things that 11-year-olds do. But she also kept studying aviation. Not because she had to, but because she loved it. It was her way of staying connected to her mother. She visited Captain Anderson sometimes. He and Sarah had become friends with her. They would talk about flying and about Captain Chen's research and about that terrifying day when everything went wrong and then somehow went right. "Do you want to be a pilot someday?" Captain Anderson asked her once. Emma shook her head. "I think I want to be a researcher, like my mom. There are still so many things in aviation that people say are impossible. I want to prove they're not impossible. I want to find solutions that don't exist yet." Captain Anderson smiled. "Your mother would be so proud of you. Not just for what you did that day, but for what you're going to do in the future." 2 years after the incident, on the anniversary of Flight 447's near crash, there was a memorial ceremony. Not for the people who died, because nobody died. But for the person who saved them. They unveiled a statue at Kennedy Airport. It showed Captain Lisa Chen in her pilot uniform, holding papers in one hand, representing her research. And in the other hand, she was holding the hand of a small girl. The plaque read, "Captain Lisa Chen, 1975 to 2019, Aviation Safety Researcher. Impossible is just another word for not yet solved. Her research saved 275 lives. Her daughter proved it worked." Emma stood in front of the statue with tears in her eyes. All 275 people from Flight 447 were there. They all came to honor the woman who saved them, even though she died before she could see her research matter. One by one, the passengers came up to Emma. Some hugged her. Some thanked her. Some just wanted to look at the girl who saved their lives. The mother from seat 24C brought her 2 children. They were older now, but they remembered that day. They remembered thinking they were going to die. "Thank you," the mother said to Emma. "Thank you for giving me more time with my babies." The man from seat 15A was there with his wife and kids. "I got to see my daughter graduate high school last month," he said. I got to walk her down the aisle at her wedding last week. I got to hold my newborn grandson yesterday. None of that would have happened without you and your mother. Stories like that continued all afternoon. Each person sharing what they got to do because they survived. The lives they got to live. The moments they got to experience. All because a mother spent 15 years researching the impossible. All because she taught her daughter everything she knew. All because that daughter was brave enough to run forward when everyone else had given up. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Emma sat alone by the statue. She looked up at her mother's bronze face. "I miss you, Mom," she said quietly. "Every single day." Captain Anderson found her there. He sat down next to her. "You know what the most important thing your mother taught you was?" he asked. "How to save a plane." Emma guessed. "No," Captain Anderson said. "She taught you that just because everyone believes something is impossible doesn't mean it actually is impossible. She taught you to question things. To look for solutions where others see only problems. To never give up, even in the final seconds." He paused, looking at the statue. "Those lessons aren't just about flying planes. They're about life. Your mother's greatest achievement wasn't her research. It was raising a daughter who has the courage to stand up and say, 'I know a better way,' even when nobody wants to listen." Emma thought about that. "Do you think she knew? When she was teaching me all those things, do you think she knew I would need them someday?" "I think she hoped you'd never need them," Captain Anderson said. "But she prepared you anyway. That's what good parents do. They give you tools for problems you hopefully won't face. And when you do face them, those tools save lives." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set behind the airport. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Emma said. "I think about all the people with knowledge like my mom's. All the researchers and scientists and experts who know things that could help people. But nobody listens to them because their ideas are different or new or challenge what everyone thinks they know. What do you want to do about it?" Captain Anderson asked. Emma smiled. "I want to find them. I want to help them be heard. I want to make sure that knowledge doesn't stay hidden in research papers that nobody reads. Because if even one person's research can save 275 lives, imagine what all of them together could do." Captain Anderson put his hand on her shoulder. "Then that's what you should do. Change the world, Emma. Just like your mother did." Emma is 16 now. She started a foundation called the Impossible Solutions Project. It helps researchers whose work gets dismissed or ignored because it's too different or too challenging to accepted ideas. She gives talks at universities and conferences. She tells the story of Flight 447 not to make herself sound like a hero, but to remind people that unconventional thinking saves lives. Captain Anderson retired from flying but works with Emma's foundation. He teaches young pilots about humility and about staying open to new ideas. Sarah became a captain and makes sure all her co-pilots know Captain Chen's techniques. And all 275 passengers from Flight 447. They live their lives. They watch their children grow up. They experience joy and sadness and all the normal things that come with being alive. Every year on the anniversary, many of them meet at that statue. They share updates about their lives. They remember the day they almost died. And they thank two people. Captain Lisa Chen, who spent 15 years researching the impossible. And Emma Chen, who was brave enough to prove that the impossible was possible after all. This story teaches us several important lessons. First, knowledge is powerful. Captain Chen spent years learning and researching. That knowledge saved lives. Second, sometimes the people with the right answers are the ones nobody expects. An 11-year-old girl saved 275 people because adults were willing to listen. Third, just because everyone says something is impossible doesn't mean it is. Captain Chen proved that. Emma proved that. Fourth, courage isn't about not being afraid. Emma was terrified. But she ran forward anyway because she knew she could help. Fifth, love continues even after death. Captain Chen's love for her daughter, shown through years of teaching, saved hundreds of lives years after she was gone. And finally, never give up. Even when Captain Anderson thought everything was lost, even when death seemed certain, there was still a solution. There's almost always a solution if we have the courage to look for it. The next time you're on a plane, remember Flight 447. Remember that somewhere in the world, people are researching solutions to problems we don't even know we have yet. And maybe, just maybe, that 11-year-old girl sitting in seat 12F is carrying knowledge that could change everything. This story is dedicated to all the researchers, scientists, and experts whose work gets ignored because it challenges conventional thinking. Keep researching. Keep learning. Keep teaching. Someday, someone might need exactly what you know.